My name's Jackson. I'm 27 now, and what I'm about to tell you happened just a couple of weeks ago, but it feels like a lifetime has passed since. I was supposed to be standing at the altar with the woman I loved. I was supposed to be saying vows, dancing, drinking, celebrating 7 years of love and commitment. Instead, I was canceling a wedding and giving my ex the harshest reality check of her life. Let me take you back. Rachel and I met in college. I was a sophomore. She was a freshman. She had this glow about her, laughing in the middle of the campus lawn with her friends, totally unaware of how many heads she was turning. I'd never believed in love at first sight until that moment. And yeah, I know that sounds cheesy as hell, but that's how hard she hit me. We started dating after a few casual study sessions, and before long, we were inseparable. We spent our 20s building a life together. Finals, job interviews, sleepless nights on a mattress in a shared apartment, saving every dime so we could afford a real place of our own. I was there through every rough patch, when she failed her certification exam, when she hated her first job, when she lost her grandmother. She leaned on me, and I never let her fall. So when I proposed to her at the same diner where we had our first date, and she cried and said yes, I thought we were unbreakable. Fast forward to 2 weeks before the wedding. Everything was ready. The garden venue was booked. The vendors paid. RSVPs were coming in. Her mom had taken over our living room with wedding crafts. We had matching pajamas for the bridal party. Rachel was beaming every day. At least, I thought she was. Then she disappeared. One morning, I woke up alone in our bed. Her purse and phone charger were gone. Her car wasn't in the driveway. At first, I wasn't worried. I figured maybe she went to run some wedding errands or meet a friend. But then noon came. Then 3 p.m. Then 6 p.m. I texted her. Nothing. I called, straight to voicemail. Panic started creeping in. I called her mom. Is Rachel with you? Her mom sounded surprised. No, she didn't say anything to me. Isn't she with you? I called her dad. Same thing. Her sister? No clue. That's when it hit me. Rachel didn't just go out for errands. She left. Without a word. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. My brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe she had cold feet? Maybe she needed a break? But the silence, the total absence, it didn't feel like cold feet. It felt like betrayal. And then the truth hit me in the gut. A text came through from my best friend Eric. Bro, what is Rachel doing in Mexico? I blinked. Mexico? Eric sent me a screenshot of an Instagram story. Rachel and her college friends, lounging poolside with margaritas in hand. The location tagged, Cancun, Mexico. Rachel was in the middle, laughing like she didn't have a care in the world. My heart sank. I clicked through the stories, one after another. Drinks. Dancing. Beach selfies. Her in the floral swimsuit I helped pick out a few months back. 2 weeks before our wedding. No message. No heads up. Just a secret trip with her friends while I sat at home, scrambling to finalize the seating chart and double-check the catering. But that wasn't even the worst part. Eric sent another message. Dude, look who she's with. He attached a second screenshot. Rachel at dinner. Holding hands. With David, her ex. The caption? Some things never change. Everything inside me went cold. This wasn't a bachelorette trip. This wasn't wedding stress. This was calculated. Rachel had ghosted me, flown out to Mexico, and was publicly cozying up to her ex. 2 weeks before our wedding. And just like that, the illusion shattered. She made her choice. Now it was my turn to make mine. Rachel had been gone for over 12 hours at that point. Not a word, not a message. The longer the silence stretched, the louder the questions in my head became. I couldn't eat, couldn't sit still. I kept pacing the living room like a caged animal, checking my phone every couple of minutes even though I knew I wouldn't find anything new. Her absence felt surreal. 1 minute we were planning a wedding, the next, I was left alone wondering if I even knew the woman I was about to marry. My gut kept flipping. Something felt off, beyond just a simple case of wedding stress. Rachel wasn't answering my texts or calls, and none of her friends were either. I tried calling Ashley voicemail, Brittany voicemail. I even reached out to her college roommate, Megan, who lived 2 states away. Nothing. It was like the entire bridal party had fallen off the face of the earth. I stared at my screen, furious and helpless. Then I remembered something. A couple of days earlier, Rachel had mentioned her friends were planning something, but she brushed it off quickly and changed the subject. At the time, I figured it was some kind of bridal shower or a surprise spa day. I didn't press her, maybe I should have. With my mind spiraling, I opened Instagram. I didn't follow most of her college friends, but I knew Brittany's handle. I typed it in, heart pounding. Her story was still live. There it was, video clips of sun-drenched pools, margaritas, palm trees, and Rachel, center frame, laughing in her floral swimsuit. My jaw clenched. The location tag said Cancun, Mexico. Cancun. She was in another country and didn't even tell me? Not only had she left without warning, but she'd blocked me from seeing it. I had to view it from a friend's account later just to get the full picture. It wasn't just a girl's getaway. In one frame, she was holding hands with someone. And not just anyone, David. Her ex. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. For years, Rachel had downplayed her past with David. He's ancient history, she said. We were young, dumb, not serious. That's what she always told me. But now, here she was, lounging poolside, holding his hand like the last 7 years with me meant nothing. I dropped my phone onto the couch and just sat there, numb. My fiancée wasn't missing. She wasn't in trouble. She was on vacation with her ex 2 weeks before our wedding. And she didn't think I deserved to know. The hurt was one thing, but the disrespect? That was something else entirely. This wasn't a lapse in communication. This was betrayal, plain and calculated. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark living room, the glow of my phone lighting up the same screenshots over and over. Rachel's smile, her hand in David's, the caption, "Some things never change." That line looped in my head like a broken record. It wasn't even subtle. It was almost like she wanted to get caught. Or maybe she just didn't care. Around 2 a.m., I finally started making phone calls, not to Rachel, but to the vendors. I knew I wouldn't sleep until I took control of the situation. First was the venue. The woman on the phone answered groggily, and I apologized for the late hour. "I need to cancel a wedding," I said, flat and emotionless. There was a long pause. "I'm sorry to hear that," she finally said. So was I. The next morning, I got up and started calling the rest, the caterer, the florist, the photographer, even the DJ. With each call, the realization set in deeper. This wasn't just the end of a wedding. It was the end of a life I'd been building for 7 years. The finality of each cancellation felt like another shovel of dirt onto a relationship I was already burying. Then came the family fallout. My parents were stunned. My mom kept asking if I was sure. "Jackson, you've been with her for so long. Maybe she just made a mistake." My dad was more measured but still cautious. "Sleep on it, son. You're emotional right now." I wasn't emotional. I was clear. For the first time since Rachel left, I saw everything for what it really was. I told them both, this wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. She made the choice to lie, to disappear, and to spend time with another man while we were supposed to be preparing for marriage. Later that afternoon, Rachel's parents showed up. I wasn't expecting them. Her mom was red-eyed and trembling. Her dad looked furious. "We need to talk," her mom said. "Rachel hasn't told us anything. Just that the wedding's off." I explained everything, what I saw, what I knew. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I told them the facts, and I let the silence sit between us. Her dad ran his hand down his face. "I can't believe this." Her mom didn't say anything, just looked at me with glassy eyes and whispered, "I'm so sorry." But sorry didn't change anything. Sorry didn't erase betrayal. I sent out one last group message, short, respectful, but honest. I told the guests that the wedding was off due to personal reasons and that I appreciated their love and support. I didn't air dirty laundry. I didn't name names. But I made it clear that this wasn't a change of heart. It was a line that had been crossed. Then I blocked Rachel's number. I blocked her social media accounts. I even unfollowed her friends. I needed space. I needed a clean break. And most of all, I needed to remind myself that walking away wasn't weakness. It was strength. In the days that followed, the silence was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, I finally had space to breathe and to think. On the other, the stillness made it impossible to ignore the weight of it all. My mind kept drifting back to the photos. Rachel and David, fingers intertwined like it was still 2015. The casual grin on her face, like this wasn't just a fling, but something real, something familiar. That's what stung the most, how comfortable she looked. Like she hadn't just shattered our future, like she didn't care what it cost me. Then came the ripple effect. Her friends started reaching out, not to apologize, but to defend her. She just needed space. "You overreacted. You should have waited to talk it out." One even had the nerve to message me. It wasn't cheating. They didn't even kiss. "Excuse me?" She ran off to Mexico with her ex 2 weeks before our wedding. hid it from me, and blocked me from seeing it on social media, but it wasn't cheating? That gaslighting lit a fire in me I didn't know I had. I replied once, "When you're the one buying a ring and planning a wedding, we'll talk about what counts as cheating." Then I muted the conversation. Eric, bless his loyalty, called me the next day and said, "Dude, you dodged a nuke disguised as a fiancé. This whole thing? It's not a crack in the wall. It's the foundation giving out." He wasn't wrong. Even her family backed off eventually. I think once the truth started to circulate, once they saw the pictures, the stories, the lies, they understood. They didn't try to convince me anymore. Her mom texted me once, just saying, "We understand. We're sorry." I didn't respond. There wasn't anything left to say. The cancellations continued. I donated some of the prepaid wedding items, decorations, favors, even the cake deposit, to a local shelter that hosted weddings for low-income couples. That felt good. Like maybe something good could still come out of all this mess. I kept the suit, though. Not as a memory. As a reminder. Because sometimes, when you're standing at the edge of something that was supposed to be forever, and it crumbles under you, you need something to hold on to. Something to remind you that you walked away because you respected yourself more than they did. About a week after everything went down, I did something I hadn't done in years. I took a weekend trip, alone. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I packed a small bag, threw my phone in the glove box, and just drove until I found a quiet little lake 2 hours outside the city. No distractions. No Rachel. No drama. Just me, a cabin, and the sound of water lapping at the shore. I needed that silence. Not the empty kind I had sitting in the house after she left, but the healing kind. The kind where you stare at your own reflection in the water and don't flinch. I spent those 2 days thinking about who I used to be before the relationship, before all the compromises, the swallowed pride, the quiet disappointments that built up like sediment over 7 years. And the truth? I missed that version of me. He had boundaries. He had a voice. He didn't tiptoe around someone else's insecurities or adjust his dreams to make room for their chaos. I sat on that dock the second night, beer in hand, stars overhead, and I made myself a promise. I would never let someone take pieces of me like that again. When I got back home, everything felt different. The rooms didn't echo with loss anymore. They echoed with possibility. I rearranged the furniture, boxed up the leftover wedding decor, and deleted the wedding playlist Rachel had spent weeks perfecting. Then I took the final step. I changed the locks. Not out of paranoia. Out of closure. Because sometimes healing starts with something as small and symbolic as turning a key in a new door. That's when I knew. I was done waiting for an apology that would never come. Done rewriting history to make excuses for someone else's selfishness. Rachel had chosen her path. And I'd finally chosen mine. A few days after I got back from the lake, Rachel sent me a letter. A real letter. Not a text. Not an email, handwritten, like we were living in the 1800s. It showed up in my mailbox, no return address, just her familiar handwriting on the envelope. I stood in the driveway holding it for a solid 5 minutes, debating whether I even wanted to know what she had to say. Curiosity won. I opened it. It was 5 pages long. Apologies, excuses, memories. She talked about how lost she felt, how the pressure of the wedding got to her, how she didn't mean for any of it to go that far. She said she missed me, that she still loved me, that maybe there was still hope for us. She ended it with, "I know I messed everything up, but I'll always wonder what could have been." I folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, and placed it in a drawer. Not because I was saving it, but because I wasn't going to let her words ruin my peace that day, or any day after that. You see, it wasn't about whether she meant what she wrote. It was about timing, about how some truths come too late to matter. And I'd already said goodbye. Now, months later, I'm not the same guy I was when this started. I've moved apartments, taken on new challenges at work, reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with. My life isn't perfect, but it's mine again. People always talk about heartbreak like it's some grand tragedy. But sometimes, it's exactly what you need to wake up, to stop surviving and start living. So if you're reading this and you've been betrayed, disrespected, or ghosted by someone who was supposed to love you, let me say this. You're not crazy. You're not weak. And you don't owe anyone forgiveness just because they finally decided to feel sorry. You owe yourself peace. And that's exactly what I've found. That night was the longest of my life. I didn't sleep. Couldn't even close my eyes. I sat in the dark with nothing but the soft hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the house for company. I stared at the TV, letting random late-night infomercials play in the background while my mind spiraled into a storm of disbelief and rage. How do you even begin to process something like this? Rachel, my fiancée, the woman I had spent the last 7 years building a life with, was halfway across the world, smiling and clinking glasses with her ex-boyfriend like we didn't even exist. And the worst part? She hadn't even tried to hide it from everyone. Just from me. I kept going back to the way she dismissed me on the phone earlier that day. Like I was the problem. Like I was overreacting. She'd hung up on me. She didn't even have the decency to have a proper conversation. She ghosted me, then doubled down on pretending it wasn't a big deal. Meanwhile, our actual wedding, was 2 weeks away. 2 weeks. Invitations had been sent. Deposits paid. Family members were already making travel arrangements. Rachel's mom had turned my living room into a second Pinterest board with flower samples and fabric swatches. My own parents had spent the past month finalizing the rehearsal dinner menu and mapping out table seating to avoid drama between distant cousins. And here Rachel was, acting like it was a casual beach weekend. I tried to talk myself down. Maybe she just ran into David. Maybe there was nothing going on. Maybe she was just overwhelmed with wedding pressure and needed a break. But no matter how many excuses I tried to come up with, I couldn't unsee what I saw in that photo. The look on her face, the softness, the familiarity was not the expression of someone running into an old acquaintance. That was someone who had chosen to be exactly where she was. With him. I found myself pacing the living room, then the kitchen, then back again like a caged animal. I checked my phone every 5 minutes. Still no response. I kept watching her close friends' stories from Eric's screenshots, seeing how carefully she'd curated the audience. I wasn't on the list. I wasn't even in the loop. I was her future husband, and I was the last to know. By the time the sun began creeping over the horizon, I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was done. Done making excuses for her. Done justifying behavior that should have been indefensible. Done pretending that someone who treated me like this could possibly be my life partner. The moment the light hit the window, I made a decision. A firm one. There would be no wedding. Not with someone who could disappear for days, lie about it, and then insult my intelligence with a half-baked excuse. She had made her choices. Now, I was making mine. Canceling the wedding wasn't as easy as making one dramatic call and flipping a switch. No, it was dozens of decisions. A chain reaction of heartbreak, logistics, and awkward conversations. The first person I contacted was the venue. The woman who answered already knew me by name, Jackson, the groom from the garden wedding. She sounded chipper at first, probably assuming I was calling to finalize something. I need to cancel the booking, I said bluntly. There was a pause on the other end. The kind of silence that holds its breath. I'm sorry to hear that, she said, her tone softening immediately. Do you want to talk about rescheduling, or? No, I cut in. There's not going to be a wedding. Her voice lowered. Understood. I'll start the cancellation process. You'll still be responsible for the remainder of the deposit, unfortunately. I know. One call down. Next came the caterer. Then the florist. The band. The officiant. Each conversation started with awkward sympathy, followed by polite business language, and ended with some variation of, I'm so sorry this is happening. Every call chipped away at the life I thought I was building. With every canceled booking, every refunded minus fees invoice, I wasn't just canceling a wedding, I was dismantling a future. The one we spent years talking about. The guest list. The first dance. The custom vows. The honeymoon we were supposed to take in Greece. Gone. And through all of it, Rachel was still in Mexico. Not a single message. Not a single call to apologize, explain, or even pretend to care about the wreckage she left behind. When I was finally done making the calls, I slumped into a chair in the dining room, the one we'd picked out together from that overpriced home goods store because she loved the rustic vibes. Now, it felt like deadweight. Just another prop in the life I was about to shed. It was around noon when I got a call from her mom. She sounded breathless, like she'd been crying. Jackson? What's going on? Rachel isn't answering me. She hasn't responded to our texts. And we just got a cancellation notice from the venue. I explained everything. From the Mexico trip, to the photos, to the phone call where she practically gaslit me for being upset. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then a trembling, oh my God. I could hear Rachel's dad in the background, demanding to know what I was saying. Her mom relayed it with bits and pieces. Mexico, with David, canceled the wedding. Why would she do this? She asked. I wish I knew, I replied. But she made her choice. They came over that evening. Her parents. I didn't want to let them in at first, but I figured they deserved to hear it in person. We sat in silence for a minute before I repeated everything. I showed them the screenshots, told them about how she'd ignored every message, how she'd acted like I was being the unreasonable one. Her dad's face darkened with every word. Her mom looked like she was about to break into tears. She was so excited about the wedding, her mom whispered. She's been planning this since she was a little girl. I didn't say anything. I had nothing left to offer. By the time they left, the house felt colder than ever. Like it was already missing her, even though emotionally, she'd left long before the plane to Mexico ever took off. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, watching the soft glow of the hallway light creep through the crack under the door. The silence was deafening, only interrupted by the occasional buzz of my phone from concerned texts or awkward checking-in messages from guests who had started hearing rumors. At around 3 a.m., I got up and went into the living room. I sat on the couch where Rachel and I had binge-watched half of Netflix over the past few years. That same couch where we'd once stayed up all night talking about baby names and mortgage rates. Now, it just felt like a reminder of everything that had fallen apart. I pulled out my laptop and opened the guest list spreadsheet. A few days ago, this file was filled with color-coded notes, RSVP statuses, meal preferences. Now, I was about to use it for something else entirely. I wrote a message. One I never thought I'd have to write. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't bitter. It was just honest. I explained that the wedding had been canceled, that Rachel had made choices that showed me this relationship wasn't what I thought it was. I didn't go into every detail, but I didn't sugarcoat it either. I let people know that I appreciated their love and support, and that this wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Then I sent it to the entire list. Dozens of guests. Family, friends, coworkers. And with one click, I let the truth out into the world. The responses started rolling in almost immediately. Some were shocked. Some were supportive. A few shared their own heartbreak stories. And some just said they were sorry and asked if I needed anything. But one response stood out. It was from Rachel's college friend, Brittany, the same one who posted that Instagram story from Mexico. Her message wasn't an apology. It wasn't even defensive. It was offensive. Wow, airing your dirty laundry like this? Super mature, Jackson. That was all she wrote. No context. No attempt to understand. Just pure deflection. I stared at it for a moment, half expecting a follow-up. When none came, I closed the laptop and let out a slow, exhausted breath. That was the problem with Rachel's inner circle. They didn't care about right or wrong. They just closed ranks and protected their own, no matter the damage done. The next morning, Eric came over. My best friend since high school. The guy who sent me the screenshots that exposed the truth. He brought coffee and bagels, and we sat in silence for a while before he finally said, "I'm proud of you, man. That couldn't have been easy." It wasn't, I admitted. But it was the only move I had left. He nodded. Rachel's been playing games for a while. You just didn't want to see it. He was right. I didn't want to believe that the person I loved could be so reckless, so selfish. But sometimes love makes you blind. And it took a brutal slap of reality to wake me up. Later that afternoon, I took off the engagement ring I'd kept on the kitchen counter since the night Rachel left. I slipped it back into its little velvet box and tucked it into the drawer. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. Just as a final act of closure. It was over. And now, it was time to rebuild. The days that followed felt surreal. I wasn't sure if I was grieving, healing, or just floating through the aftermath of something that used to be my future. Everywhere I looked, there were reminders of Rachel. Her hoodie still hung on the back of the dining chair. Her handwriting was on the sticky notes on the fridge. Even her scent still lingered faintly on the pillow next to mine. I knew I had to start cleaning up, not just physically, but emotionally too. The first step was boxing things up. I went through our shared belongings methodically, like I was separating two lives that had been tangled for far too long. I packed her things into labeled bins: clothes, toiletries, random trinkets. A part of me hesitated when I came across the scrapbook she made for our 3-year anniversary. Each page had photos, ticket stubs, little handwritten notes about what she loved about me. It was like looking at a ghost of a different version of her, one that no longer existed. I set the scrapbook aside. I didn't have it in me to toss it. Not yet. As I cleared out our closet, I came across the wedding shoes I bought just 2 weeks earlier. Brand new, never worn. I stood there holding them for a minute, wondering what version of me had picked them out, so excited, so clueless. I put them back in the box, sealed it shut, and stacked it with the rest of the returns I'd need to make. The wedding vendors were next. I had already canceled most of them, but some required in-person visits to close things out. Walking into the florist shop and returning the color swatches Rachel and I had picked felt like ripping open a wound I just started to bandage. The florist looked at me with soft eyes and handed me a refund receipt without asking a single question. That kind of quiet kindness hit harder than any words could. The biggest emotional hurdle, though, was my parents. They had been skeptical about how fast I'd pulled the plug. But once they heard about the full extent of Rachel's lies and saw the photos Eric showed them, they came around. My mom was especially shaken. "You didn't deserve this, sweetheart," she said as she hugged me tighter than she had in years. And Rachel? She went quiet. No texts, no calls, no emails, not even a knock on the door. For someone who once couldn't go an hour without sending me a meme or a thinking of you message, her silence was almost deafening. But I knew what it meant. She wasn't ghosting me out of respect. She was regrouping, spinning the story to her advantage before deciding how to re-enter the narrative. And sure enough, a few days later, it started. First came the vague Instagram post, some cryptic quote about trust being fragile paired with a black and white selfie. Then came the messages to our mutual friends. Subtle at first, like, "I'm not ready to talk about what happened," or "It's been a rough few weeks." But the undertone was clear. She was painting herself as the one who had been wronged. One of those friends, Lisa, sent me a screenshot. Rachel had written, "I just needed a break. I didn't cheat. I just reconnected with someone from my past, and it got taken out of context." Out of context? She went on a secret trip, hid it from me, blocked me from seeing her social media stories, and held hands with her ex in a public Instagram post. If that's context, I'd love to see what she considers betrayal. At first, I wanted to blast her, expose everything, post the screenshots, let everyone see the truth. But I didn't, because part of healing, real healing, is choosing peace over petty. And I was done letting her control the narrative. I was done playing in her version of the story. Around this time, I started journaling. I didn't expect it to help at first. Felt kind of cliché, like something you'd see in a movie where the heartbroken protagonist pours their feelings into a leather-bound notebook. But the first time I sat down and started writing, something shifted. The rage I'd been carrying, the hurt, the confusion, it all started to make sense once I put it on paper. I wrote down everything. The good, the bad, the things I was ashamed to admit out loud. I wrote like I was talking to a version of myself who still believed Rachel was the one. And slowly, I began to feel lighter. There was a day, maybe about a week after the last wave of chaos, when I realized I hadn't thought about Rachel for more than a few minutes. That was a breakthrough. I was sitting at the park, sipping coffee, just watching people walk their dogs and play with their kids. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't carrying that heavy weight in my chest. I wasn't refreshing my phone, hoping for an apology. I wasn't replaying our arguments. I was just there, alive, breathing, moving forward. That small moment of peace reminded me how good life could be without constant emotional whiplash. Meanwhile, Rachel's attempts to salvage her image didn't slow down. A few of our old college friends reached out, asking for my side. I appreciated that they even cared to ask, but honestly, I was tired of retelling the story. So I gave them the short version. She left. She lied. I canceled the wedding. That's it. The ones who mattered respected that. The ones who didn't, well, they drifted away. And I didn't chase them. Then one afternoon, I got a message request from a name I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something told me to check. It was from a woman named Katie, someone I vaguely remembered Rachel mentioning years ago as a friend from a study abroad program. Her message was short but gut-wrenching. "Hey, I know this is weird, but I feel like you deserve to know. Rachel did the same thing to my brother 5 years ago. Engaged, reconnected with an ex, disappeared for a weekend. When he found out, she ghosted him completely. No explanation. No closure." I sat there staring at the screen. 5 years ago. Same behavior. Same lies. Same emotional carnage. My stomach twisted, not from pain, but from vindication. It wasn't just me. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't overreacted. Rachel had a pattern. A secret, destructive rhythm she danced to every time things got serious. Katie's message ended with, "He never really got over it. But I hope you do." That last line stuck with me. I thought about that guy, Katie's brother, somewhere out there still carrying scars from Rachel's choices. I didn't want that to be me. I couldn't let it be me. So I messaged Katie back and thanked her. Her words, her warning, gave me exactly what I needed to finally, truly close the door on that chapter. After Katie's message, something inside me finally clicked into place. All the doubts, the guilt trips, the quiet whispers in the back of my mind telling me I might have overreacted, they all vanished. I wasn't the villain in this story. I was the guy who loved deeply, trusted fully, and got burned because of it. And you know what? That's not something to be ashamed of. That's something to learn from. I stopped replaying our memories like some sad highlight reel. I stopped looking at old photos and wondering where it all went wrong. I knew exactly where it went wrong. It went wrong the moment Rachel decided I was no longer enough. The moment she chose excitement over loyalty, secrecy over honesty, and her past over our future. And that's when I started living again. I got back into things I hadn't touched in years. I picked up guitar again, jammed with Eric and a few guys from work on weekends. Started going on hikes, not to escape, but because I actually wanted to. I redecorated the apartment, got rid of anything that reminded me of the wedding or her. The place felt mine again, not ours. Not haunted by plans that never came true. Just mine. People still asked questions from time to time. Coworkers, neighbors, even my barber. So, still getting married? I'd just smile and say, nope, dodged a bullet. And the more I said it, the more I believed it. And then came the silence. The texts from Rachel stopped. Her friends fell off the radar. Her parents stopped checking in. It was like the universe had finally understood I was done and gave me room to breathe. And in that silence, I found peace. And no, it wasn't all sunshine and healing montages. There were nights I still sat up wondering how someone I knew so well could turn into a stranger overnight. There were mornings I woke up expecting to see her beside me and felt that sting of absence all over again. But healing isn't linear. It's messy. It's slow. And it's worth it. So where am I now? I'm not dating yet. Not seriously. But I'm open to it. Something I couldn't have said a few months ago without feeling bitter. I've built back trust in myself. And that's the most important part. I know now what I bring to the table. I know I deserve someone who doesn't make me question my worth or my place in their life. And Rachel? Last I heard, she moved back in with her parents for a bit. Word is, things didn't work out with her ex-shocker. She's apparently taking time to reflect, according to someone who ran into her at a coffee shop. But that's not my business anymore. Her chapter in my life is closed. For good. So, to anyone who's been through betrayal, who stood at the edge of heartbreak wondering if they should stay or walk away, here's what I'll say. Walk away. Because love without respect is just a beautiful lie. And no matter how long you've been together, no matter how many memories you've built, you deserve someone who chooses you fully, honestly, without hesitation. Thanks for sticking through this whole story. I didn't expect it to turn into a novel, but I guess some wounds need space to breathe before they can heal. And now, I'm ready to start the next chapter. On my own terms.